This is the portrait of Jules de Jory by Manet. He's been in private hands for several decades. This means that he has the associated condition issues. It's immediately obvious that the surface and what we see and its visual properties are quite compromised aesthetically. The first thing that we'll do will be to do something called surface cleaning, which is just taking off the first layer of dust and house dirt, and sometimes you'll get coal and particulate dirt and that kind of thing, which suggests that he's been somewhere very urban. And under that, we've got some discoloured natural resin varnish and restoration. The idea of removing all of the disfiguring coatings and things is obviously a very tantalising one. And the aim of this project is to research that prospect and eventually undertake varnish removal and hopefully reveal a much more subtle version of what we can see under all of the layers. So if I just roll the swab gently over this area, you can see that we're effectively lifting a veil. The effect of this visually on paintings is a real deadening effect, and so the sense of perspective and space tends to get flattened, so hopefully that will all start to come back even with just the surface cleaning. I used saliva for the first two passes with this. The thought is that it contains enzymes and salts and sort of slightly gelled consistency, which help with wetting the surface and removing the surface dirt. We were immediately getting some quite subtle and profound results. So now what we have is the painting minus its surface dirt, and we can already see a real change in composition in terms of how it's read as a result of being cleaner. One thing that we have noticed is that the effect of the surface dirt was to put a cool cast over the whole area of flesh painting, and taking that off has meant that we're now left with a yellow varnish over the paint, which now means that this all has this warm appearance, which again will change once the very yellow varnish comes off.
It seems to me that the varnish here is almost fighting against the painting underneath, isn't it? And the two are in competition, really.
Yeah.
It's sort of disguising the artist's original intentions for the image. A project like this ideally would be about rediscovering what the artist's original intentions were.
What's happening now is I'm just taking off the surface coatings and the varnish layer. As you can see, it's a very discoloured natural resin varnish. Because it is a natural resin, this discoloration starts to happen after about 15 years after it's been applied. Really, this is another one of those demonstrations of how distorting a discoloured surface coating can actually be. But I think you can see that in the flesh paint, and certainly with the white passages, it really makes quite a difference. The hand as well is quite strikingly cool in tone, and you can see there's areas here where he's just softened and sweetened the outline of things, which again just really contributes to some of the subtlety in this area. There's these tiny red touches and things which really just bring everything alive. And I think that once we've recovered the sense of this throughout, then I think we'll be looking at a much more dynamic image than the one that we're used to seeing under the varnish. Well, it's been a busy week. I've been able to remove restoration and varnish from the robe and half of his face, as you can see. So there's a nice half and half shot here that shows the effect of the dirty, old, discoloured varnish and the cleaned original. The other thing is you can see that the blue is no longer compromised by the yellow varnish, and you can see that the shift here, I've left yellow varnish over the inscription to clean later, and you can see the visual difference is amazing. This was a critical area to clean, and obviously anything like this where you've got a thin black paint is going to be potentially very sensitive. The yellow varnish was really obscuring this gorgeous blue, which we now know to be cobalt blue. I think we're really getting a sense of a really fantastic painting coming out. In the next few days, we would progress to the structural treatment, which will involve removing the stretcher from the painting. And the reason I would be considering this is because you can see there's a split here, and we know that this is probably a very brittle edge all the way around the canvas. We can see there's quite a lot of bulges, and the tension is quite slack. And this top edge has very much failed around the tacks, and the tacks tend to promote degradation of the canvas. I'm very conscious that this is a painting on its original stretcher, and as an object it has some real integrity. If we're going to do this work, then I don't want in any way to compromise that. So we'll use the original stretcher. All of the labels and things on the back will be retained so that we're not losing any information about the object and its history. Here we have the Manet flat on his back. We have the original stretcher separate here, again with all its labels and things intact. Once you see paintings with the stretcher removed, the fragility becomes quite apparent. And you can see there's quite a lot of cemented dirt. I've already removed quite a lot of really not very nice dust and dirt and a fly and things, which tends to get trapped down the back of stretchers. So once I've cleaned this up, I'll be adding something called a strip lining to the edges. So that will be made from a polyester sailcloth, and it will protrude into the edge of the back of the painting to allow us to re-stretch it evenly.
Yeah.
So I've been using a hot melt adhesive to attach the polyester sailcloth to the inner edge of the painting on the back. Once I've done the structural work and it's safely reattached on the stretcher, I can then turn it over, varnish the painting, and then we're on the restoration phase. We're just in the final stages of retouching this portrait, and I've been using, as you can see, these dry pigments just to reinstate areas of loss and wear throughout the image.
I have to say, it's transformed much more than I anticipated.
I think so as well. But you can see, because so much of it is about cool tones and warm tones, and once you suppress all the cool stuff with warm varnish, all that subtlety goes out the window.